can't. Only thing I have is the mute button. Zoom.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. We're going to call to order the Legal Affairs Subcommittee for the Peabody City Council. In attendance, we have members of the subcommittee, Councilors McGinn, Councilor O'Neill, Councilor Sasslaw, and Councilor Turco. We also have Councilor Rosignol, Councilor Welton, Councilor Gould, Councilor Charis, Councilor Manning Martin. We have two items on the agenda this evening. The first item is a motion by Councilor Manning Martin to refer to the Legal Affairs Subcommittee a discussion regarding the process that city boards use to post legal notices in local newspapers and a request that the chairs of the various boards attend the committee meeting. So we're very fortunate that we have numerous chairs here tonight. We have Dan Doucette, the purchasing agent, who has a lot of background with this particular subject. We also have former Councilor Fred Murtagh. He's the chair of the licensing board. He's also joined by Darrell McCarthy, who's the clerk for that board. We have the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Fran Gallucci. Thank you for coming. We have Michael Rizzo, chair of the Conservation Commission.
Good evening.
Do we have Mr. Betancourt, the chair of the Planning Board? I didn't see him as one of the participants, but keep an eye out. So my intention for this evening is kind of an information gathering session where, if there's anything that might come up that we don't have an answer to tonight, we can always research it, get it back to the committee. I think that's the best way to handle it. And I'm not sure if we have Dan on yet, but Dan had some information he was going to provide, and also we can go through the various, if we have any questions for the various boards. Every board's slightly different on how they do their legal advertisements. Dan should be joining us momentarily. I thought I saw him on here. Hold on one moment. We're just going to give Dan one moment. He was calling in as we were starting. Just hold on one moment, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe while we're waiting, there's an administrative matter. We have, from the regular meeting package, items 8C and H to receive. I would make that motion.
You heard the motion. Can we get a roll call vote?
Councilor Sasslaw.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
I see Dan has joined us as an attendee. If we could bring him in. Dan, I see you've joined us. We've begun the meeting. I think it would be appropriate if you give us a brief overview of your experience with regards to the legal ads for various boards and committees for the city. Can you hear us?
Thank you, and I want to apologize. I had the meeting for 6:30, so at least I'm trying to get caught in as quickly, and I thank you for the phone call to remind me. My first level is that for as long as I've been in purchasing for the city, what my office does is based on the laws that apply to what I buy for the city, whether it's construction or goods and services. And at least in my world, there are two statutes, one that relates to construction projects and the second that relates to goods and services, both using the same language, which is a newspaper of general circulation in the locality. That, you know, I'm putting my historical hat on, that's changed a lot since the days of the Salem Evening News and the Peabody Times to what we have before us today. Other things have changed, but some have not, and some of this language goes back to the 1940s and the 50s. Now, newspaper advertising under the bid laws is an exempt transaction, so I don't have to necessarily go out and advertise to get newspaper rates. We've always been aware of what the differences are between the various publications, some being cheaper than the others. But there's a second level for me, which is sometimes I get a department head coming in and they want something in the paper right away to go out and either get a contract done or whatever. There are differences, obviously, between daily newspapers and weeklies. So that's another item in the mix. As to the other boards and commissions, they most directly work with the city clerk's office, and I've worked with 3 city clerks. And what we've tried to do over the years, and it's in your packet now, is to provide information that gives the boards and commissions and those who place applicant paid ads the information that we gather from the various newspapers as to their prices, their deadlines, etc. Those have changed as the publications have changed ownerships, that sort of thing. But one thing tends to remain the same, which is the relative price points between the various newspapers. I won't reiterate what you see in the packet, but you can see who's the most expensive and who's the least expensive. And that's totally up to the board or commission, based upon whatever their rules may be, to make that decision on their own. We all obviously have budget constraints. And sometimes it's a price-driven thing. Sometimes it's a time-driven thing. And what I've tried to do is work with the city clerks to get that information out, help them gather that information, and then it's disseminated to the various boards and committees, some of whom are here today and others are not, all of whom have their own rules and regulations that they have to follow. One other thing, in case you're interested, we've never seen that trying to gather these prices has brought the price down. The newspaper legal ad rate is the legal ad rate, and it's not going to change simply because we throw more advertising their way. Their price is their price because they do legal ads not just for cities and towns, but the courts, mortgage companies, lawyers, etc. And the price is the price. All we try to do is to make it easy to find what the price is, and as you see in the packet, put it in one place for everybody to recognize. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have from my perspective.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your information there. To save, instead of going from committee to committee asking them, that's one reason in our packet it has their specific procedures. And I know we've got a lot to do tonight, but I think I'll open it up to the council, to the committee, for any questions you might have specific to any of the boards that are here, or Dan, who's well-versed on this subject. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? I know Councilor Manny Martin had a motion on the floor regarding that. Councilor Manny Martin?
Yes, thank you. And first, I want to thank you, Councilor Melville, for reaching out to all the boards and collecting all this information. It makes for a very informative and productive meeting that I think we're going to have. So I really appreciate it, and I also appreciate all the board members who are joining us this evening. And the reason I referred this to Legal Affairs is that it became evident to me when residents, constituents were calling, looking for where they could find the legal notices in the local newspapers. And where normally one person would find a notice in the Peabody Weekly, they couldn't find it, and then sometimes it would be in the Lynn Item, and then some notices would be in the Salem News. And so there it became evident to me that the law, it just says for the city council that we have to, for special permit hearings, we have to post no sooner than 14 days out in 2 consecutive newspapers of general circulation. So the language of the law in and of itself is very antiquated. It hasn't kept up with the times nor the technology. And so I'm wondering, are we doing, we may be meeting the intent of the law, but again, it's so antiquated. Are we, although meeting the intent, are we doing the best that we can as a city to get the information, notifications out, whether it be from the city council or various boards, in a more unified way so that residents can know where to look? And during the pandemic is kind of when a lot of things were highlighted, and this was highlighted during the pandemic when boards, many boards, including the council, had stopped meeting, yet their notices went out well prior, and then there's no obligation to repost them according to the law. Just my reading, again, I'm not an attorney, but we might want to refer that to be reviewed, Council Melville, for a later date. But are we doing the best we can? Can we do things more unified, if it's at all possible, so that we can get a mechanism in place for the public so that they can find notices of information easier and maybe one-stop shopping for them? And again, I know each and every board has its own rules, and some of them actually, I think it was Conservation Commission law, actually, it's the only one I found it in, says that if the meeting is recessed, they will repost. And that's not required, I don't think. It's certainly not for the city council. I don't know if it's required for any other boards. I do know, after lengthy discussion with Chair Gallucci, that she made a point to repost for her ZBA for the ZBA 40B hearings that had been reposted, several months ago, because it makes sense, and it was the right thing to do, but I don't think that was required. So to me, I think I'd like to talk too about if meetings are recessed at the request of the petitioner, can we require, maybe create an ordinance that we do exactly what the ZBA chair had done, was require that it be reposted. It just seems fair, and again, if the meeting is recessed at no fault of the petitioner, I wouldn't require that. But if it's 3 or 4 times the petitioner requests a recess, then the public will no longer be on top of when that date is, and they'll miss it. And that has happened. So those are the types of things that I wanted to discuss, and really just have a kind of a free flow of how things work with each individual boards. And as Dan indicated, each board does things differently. They may have different laws that apply to them. And so that's where I was headed, and I really appreciate you all joining us this evening and sharing your expertise. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. I think that we could look at, I think that makes a lot of sense, and something maybe we can forward to our legal counsel about conditioning any sorts of requests for continuance by an applicant. And that doesn't have to just be for the council. It can impact these fellow boards, these other boards. I see Chair Gallucci would like to speak, so we can recognize her.
Thank you. A couple of points. So we allow the applicants to choose which newspaper they want to go in. That's why, in regards to Councilor Manning's request for continuity, so it's 6 1/2 dozen of the other. If you require somebody to always go to a more expensive newspaper, is that correct? or do you do what, I mean, I don't want to use like, oh wow, ZBA does everything right, although we do. You know, we allow a choice. You know, we give the different newspapers and what their cost is, and we let the applicant choose. And then Carla McGrath, my wonderful, wonderful clerk, takes it from there. Just something to think about. Choice versus this is the newspaper you have to choose. As far as continuances, you know, we're not required to repost in the newspaper continuances because that does cost the petitioner more money. However, with the 40B in particular, it had been so long since we met that it was only the right thing to do to repost it. And let's not forget that our legal ads are also on the website and also posted in City Hall. And after a meeting, if it is continued, we let everybody know that night that the date of the continuance and it will be continued. And usually, if people are involved and they're concerned and they're interested, they're going to know about it. But I do understand that you might want to have a little more, I don't know, advertisement about it. I just don't know if you're getting into something that's going to snowball into a big mess. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan, Mr. Doucette, if you could just talk, I know we have 3 different newspapers that are available for legal ads. Can you just talk about, I'm not sure we can, because of the way the law is versed, correct? It's general circulation is mentioned a couple of times. I know in liquor licensing, it's newspaper of record is how they identify it. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Well, I can only speak with good knowledge about what my responsibilities are for public procurement. Ms. Gallucci talked about what guides her operations, and I think that's a wonderful example of what the individual boards and commissions have to deal with. I put it out once or twice, depending on what the requirement is. I use usually the cheapest because it is paid for out of the city budget as opposed to something paid by the applicant. And as I said, I do help the clerk in gathering the information and coming up with a memo, which admittedly is a little stale, but I think it's on perhaps the to-do list once things calm down after election time, to update that, to loop back in with the, and by the way, there's 3 publications owned by only 2 companies. So I can tell you that they've gone through at the item a little bit of difficulty in terms of just taking care of my needs, but I'm afraid I can't speak to the other boards and commissions.
No, I think that's sufficient. What you
yeah.
said to us. That kind of answers a lot of the question. I know Mr. Rizzo, Chair of the Conservation Commission. You would like to speak?
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
We kind of follow the same guideline that Fran had mentioned. We provide the petitioners with a choice of 3 newspapers. They generally go with the cheaper of the 3. Relative to continuations, we would, if we continue, it's usually made at the request of the petitioner, although the commission can also request a continuance. It is agreed upon at the meeting, and then we also take a motion. It's a motion made to continue, and it's done with a roll call, so everybody knows that it's been continued. Everybody at the meeting, all those who came to sit in, they're told about the date, and then Lucia also will notify the abutters. We won't re-advertise. We don't require them to re-advertise or repost it in the newspaper because it can be very expensive. A lot of the people come before us are just the residents who are trying to do something at home, and it can be very costly. So we continue without the need to advertise in the newspapers. But Lucia will contact them, will contact people that may not have been at the meeting. Anybody who was contacted by notification, Lucia will notify them by email or phone call and let them know when the meeting is scheduled. And we usually schedule for the next meeting or to a date certain, depending on why the meeting is being continued, because we have many reasons why we're waiting for more information or some testing or something like that. So maybe it might not be the next month, maybe a month or two later. So we try to, and we've been doing this for as long as I've been on the commission. It seems to work for us. The people, the public who are there welcome that, and it seems to work for us.
Thank you. We'll follow up with the last board that we have. Does Chair Murtagh or Daryl, the clerk of the licensing board, is there anything that you've seen that's with regards to this issue that we could look at to assist you, or is this? I know Daryl, for when I know you actually file them. A lot of it is a timing issue, so that's typically your choice of newspaper to go in. Is that correct?
That's correct. And as you know, Ryan, is most of the transactions with liquor licensing need to have a hearing, within a 30-day period mostly. The board usually has to act on an application. So basically, where the licensing board meets twice a month, on like a Monday, they will move to accept and schedule for public hearing at their next meeting. Really, we are limited in terms of going with the daily newspaper because it has to be 10 days before the next hearing date. So it's just a small window of opportunity, where the weekly's deadline is Tuesday at noon. With a Monday night meeting, sometimes, the proper legal advertisement can't be prepared in that time frame. So it's just best, obviously, to go with the daily publications.
Thank you.
And not often do we have matters that are continued, because really the board needs to act on their applications in a short time frame.
Thank you, Daryl. Do any councilors have any follow-ups or questions regarding this? Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a quick point. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but the PBD Weekly, whereas it used to be distributed for free throughout the entire city, does not get distributed in South Peabody, and it's very difficult to find in South Peabody. When I do get it, I have to venture over to Johnson Street and grab it from that convenience store over there. None of the 4 or 5 convenience stores within walking distance from my house carry it. So I just wanted the chairs of each board to be aware of that sometimes it's difficult if that's where the advertising takes place. Thank you.
Councilor Manning Martin?
Thank
Can
you.
I just tell John Turco, you can move to West Peabody.
Fran, if I could borrow a couple $100,000, I'll be over your way.
All right. Councilor Manning Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And along those lines, also with respect to, the antiquated language of a newspaper of general circulation, the Lynn item really is not offered along the same lines as Councilor Turco has pointed out. The Lynn item isn't offered out in West Peabody or Central Peabody. It's really just out on the Peabody-Lynn line, pretty much, because those are the circulation. I think I called the Lynn item. It might have been like 2,000 or something in Peabody. So for a West Peabody issue to be posted in the Lynn item is really doesn't, I don't think, meets any intent of the law for a general circulation, because you're not even hitting that target. So those are just some of the issues that are out there, again, because the law didn't keep up with the times. So I know everybody is doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, but I'm just wondering if we can just find a better way to reach people, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Charis?
Just going to switch mics here. Mine doesn't seem to be working. Thank you, Chairman. Even though I'm not on the committee, I appreciate your opportunity to speak. And then one of my questions is that are we utilizing, the board's utilizing, and what their take is if there's work that need to be done to making sure all notices are on the website, the city website. I know numerous times I refer to the website when notices of certain things are going out and disinformation that I always try to promote. I know when the state was here a couple years ago, the open meeting law, they talked about that and emphasized that a lot of that information should be going on the Peabody website for information. Are the boards able to utilize the Peabody website, and do we have here at City Hall somebody who can assure that is being able to be utilized? I know it's manpower is tough. Just looking for.
Well, thank you, Counselor. I don't know the folks that handle actually putting that up are not here. It was one thing because we're focusing specifically on the newspaper legal advertisements, but we could get further information on that. I know Chair Gallucci had mentioned before that she does put it on the website and she's seeking to speak. But I checked the calendar, and I had talked to Dan Doucette about this as well, and they do update the calendar with the hearings for these boards. Now, the time frame is all based on when the availability of those people to be able to upload that information. So, Chair Gallucci, you were seeking to speak on this?
Yeah, I just want to say that we are on the website. Our legal ads are on the website, and all our notices are on the website. IT does it for us, and the abutters receive the legal ad in the mail. So if they don't get it from the newspaper, the abutter list, which usually means those are the people that always show up, a legal ad is mailed to them. So, hopefully we have everything covered.
Thank you. Councilor Charis?
Yeah, I just had one question. And as we spoke early on, that this, the way the laws were set up has been many years, and things have changed, and more people are using websites more than publication. I may not be one of them, but does that fall in line with the laws and the ruling that we can utilize the websites? Does that count, or does it have to be newspaper print?
Councilor Charis's question, in the packet, the specific, one reason I asked for the specific legislation that represents each board is you'll see that these are state laws that govern how these boards advertise their public hearings. And one thing I was going to talk about at the end after everybody is this is something I deal with pretty regularly. Daryl hears from me quite a bit on, representing the cities and towns on this issue is, as it's been said before, it's very archaic. There's paywalls now that are in place online for newspapers that didn't exist before. So if you're a Boston, say somebody puts something in the Boston Herald and they typically don't get a physical form of it, and if you live in Boston, you don't see these public notices like you used to. It's an issue. It's something that's been brought up at the state level a number of times. But no, you have to follow the specific guidance in the statute, which each statute's slightly different. Some of them say generally circulated, others say newspaper of record. Councilor Sasslaw?
Thank you. Just want to go back to the publications a little bit. And in our packet, it talks about the Peabody Advocate, which is no longer in existence. But I did want to bring up the fact that the Peabody Weekly is owned by the Lynn Item. So I don't know if at any point, maybe Mr. Doucette, you might want to reach out to them and see if there's a possibility where we can get, the Peabody Weekly basically is a duplicate of the Lynn Item as far as the stories. They don't publish really new stories. They might publish some national stuff, but anything that's local is usually a duplicate of what came out in the Lynn item. So it might be a possibility where you could get an ad in the Lynn item, which is a daily paper, and the weekly paper, and maybe get a combined rate that is still probably less than Salem News. And the Peabody Weekly is, I do get it in West Peabody. I know there's some issue with that, but I would say probably as you head in South Peabody, it might be available. The Lynn item is definitely available. Probably bought stronger in South Peabody than in West Peabody, where I think the Salem News. But I just wanted to clarify that that paper is owned by one entity. So really, at the end of the day, all we have is two entities to choose from when it comes to newspapers. And might makes I think the newspaper legal rates that we have in our packet are May 1st, 2017. So one publication is no longer in existence, and out of the 3 publications that are listed, 2 of them are owned by one entity. So you know, they're not certainly growing rapidly. So it might behoove us to reach out and see if there's a possibility where they would do a duplicate ad in the Lynn item in the Peabody Weekly, because I said they're published by the same publisher. Just a thought. I want to throw it out there. Obviously, I think the Salem Evening News is, you know, once again, that's May 1st, 2017. I don't know if their rates have gone up or gone down. As I said, it's still pretty competitive out there as far as they're trying to get every dollar, and they're struggling. So I don't know if those rates have gone up or gone down, but might not be the worst thing to get this piece of paper updated to what the current rates are. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Doucette, I guess just a suggestion following up on some of the comments made by other councilors and most recently by Councilor Sasslaw with, I think it's Essex Media Group that owns those 2 publications. It might be helpful just as you're reaching out if there's an opportunity to discuss a lower rate or whatever might be possible there. But I think it'd be helpful to know the distribution dates and deadlines, and then also where the distribution area is for each of those publications. So as we have multiple commissions, you know, posting these notices, that they can be sure to select the publication that's relevant to where the project might be. So just a suggestion. I don't know if that might be possible to include going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Any other? Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman Melville. I just had a couple of thoughts. I appreciate everyone putting together this package, all the work from the boards, and like ZBA Chairperson Galucci mentioned, the abutters do get notice, direct abutters within 300 feet of the property line. But I wonder, without creating work for our state senators and state representatives, but is there, you know, an updating of our Mass General laws that we can get, you know, the newspapers? I love having local newspapers cover city politics and government, but not many people of the younger generation read newspapers. Do we work it into, you know, making it stay, hopefully, you know, city websites or something like that, and maybe where people, you know, the options of, or inclusion of, you know, Facebook or something like that, other technologies that, you know, weren't created when this general law was put into place. So I certainly want to create extra work, but maybe if we can help that and not create an additional burden to any of our boards or commissions, but definitely see if we can get additional, you know, publications and kind of get to the way the world is going. So just wanted to make those general comments. Thank you.
Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you. And through you to Dan Doucette. Dan, can you hear me? Are you still there, Dan?
Yes, I hear you, Councilor.
Excellent, excellent. When you speak to the Lynn item with respect to Councilor Saslaw's suggestion, since the Lynn item and the weekly are owned by the same entity, there is a online public notice of Massachusetts.org that will post, but the newspapers of record have to enter it, whatever they've posted. And the Salem News does utilize it, and the Lynn item utilizes it, but oddly enough, the weekly news doesn't utilize it. So when you speak to the Lynn item or the Peabody Weekly, again, same entity, Could you ask them if they would utilize as well, since they do with the Lynn item, could you ask them to post as well on the public notice Massachusetts.org page? That collects every city and town's legal notices. So it's not any extra work, it's the newspaper itself will just utilize that website that's used across the state. I kind of just stumbled on that. So that would be no work for any of you. That would be the newspaper that is chosen would utilize this website. So again, Dan, it's publicnoticemassachusetts.org. If you could ask the Lynn item to utilize that when the weekly news is used. Is that clear?
What I would suggest is that we can make the request, and if they say, no, we're not going to post from the weekly, we could put that information on the recap. That I think what I'm hearing is that we need to do some updating, but maybe it will be after the first of the year with the clerk's office, and make that part of the presentation that is given to the boards and commissions with the updated information from the 3 newspapers and the 2 owners thereof.
That's excellent, Dan. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. We are kind of up against it in time. We have one more item to deal with. I just want to thank all of the board chairs. I do think some good information came out of this. One thing I did, couple thoughts quickly, that it's been said before and will be said again, these are very archaic laws, and I think they're actually a hindrance to some of these boards. They force them to do things they wouldn't typically do, and they're not getting the same bang for the buck that they might have gotten when the laws were originally written, that people know what's going on. And I think the boards, as Chair Rizzo said, they're making sure that this is all on notice and that people know when the next hearing is. One thing I did think that is absolutely worth looking into is if a applicant comes before the council or any one of these boards, Councilman Manning Martin had referenced this, is can we make it a condition on approving the continuance, the vote of the board or the council, that they have to re-advertise the hearing on whenever that hearing is going to be. I do think there's some value there. If people come to a meeting, we've seen it, and something gets continued, people get upset by that. But that way we can ensure that folks are informed of when the next meeting is publicly. If somebody would be willing to make a motion for that, to request the city solicitor's opinion on is it possible to make a condition on any continuance request by an applicant that they have to be re-advertise the hearing on when that hearing would take place.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
You heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Sasslaw,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
I just want to thank everybody that attended tonight to help us, give us some information. You do so much work for the city, on behalf of the city, and on behalf of the Legal Affairs Committee. I really want to thank all of you for taking the time out tonight. This was very helpful. It's refreshing to get this information so we all know this going into these meetings. So thank you very much, all of you. You do a great service for the city.
Night, Darrell.
All right, we're going to move on to the next item.
Thank you. Good night.
Which is a, it's from Attorney Evernides, from 7 Essex Green Drive regarding easement at 2 Crystal Drive. I think we have Attorney Evernides available, and if Attorney Evernides is available, can you give us a brief discussion, a brief description, because we're up against it, on what you're trying to do here, and if anybody has any questions, we can take it from there. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. So there's a parcel of land at 2 Crystal Drive, which is owned by the Watchtower Society of New York. They inherited the property as a result of a gift from a woman named Lillian Petch, who formerly owned the property. They asked me to obtain some title insurance for them so they could ultimately sell the property. And in doing the title examination, and going to the site, I discovered that there was no access legally that was usable from Lowell Street to this parcel of land. The access has traditionally been made by a paved driveway, which is situated now over the city's property, which was deeded to the city in 2003 for the bike path by the MBTA. There is a right-of-way of record at the registry for this parcel, but it lies primarily beneath the surface of Crystal Lake, and it can't be used. So the only legal access that would exist would be by way of an easement from the city over the bike path land, which is where this driveway, which has been used for decades by this parcel owner and others, is located. The MBTA, when it granted the property to the city for the bike path, included in that deed a no vehicle restriction. No motorized vehicles could be used to use any portion of the land that was granted by the MBTA to the city. I determined that needed to be dealt with, went to the MBTA, negotiated for my client a release of that restriction as to that lot. And we're just waiting to have the city grant us the easement so we can put that piece together with the easement and have legal access to 2 Crystal Drive from Lowell Street that we can actually use. It's not underwater. That's kind of the summary of it. I can answer any questions. The materials, if you've had a chance to look at them that I submitted, should supplement some of the things that I just said if you have detail that you need. But I'll provide any answers to any questions you need.
Thank you very much. Just also for councilors to note, Don Kahn, city solicitor, is available for any questions on this. The letter from Attorney Arvanites kind of speaks for itself. Any questions on this issue? Okay. Do we, Councilor O'Neill?
Thank you, Chairman Melville. The letter from Attorney Arvanites, in summary, Arvanites, sorry, apologies, sir, gave a great summary, and he certainly summarized it. Based on, Attorney Khan has reviewed this material, and given that they are looking for just an access easement, I would make a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a access agreement with the Watchtower Tract Society of New York, reading a permanent, non-exclusive 41 and 25.25 foot wide easement over, across, and through that portion of grantor's land shown as access easement containing 22,679 square feet, more or less, on a plan entitled Plan of Land Located in Peabody, Mass., prepared by Eastern Land Survey Associates, Incorporated, Christopher R. Mello, PLS, 104 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. 01960, 978-531-8121, scale 1 inch equals 20 foot, dated October 7th, 2019, known as the easement plan, recorded herewith for purposes of passing and repassing by foot and by vehicle to and from Lowell Street to a way 25 feet in width, shown on said plan, and leading to the land of grantee, shown on said plan as Lot 18C, and commonly known as numbered as 2 Crystal Drive, Peabody, Mass. 01960. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor O'Neill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Okay, roll call vote.
Counselor Sasslaw,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much, and we can get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
The
Thank you,
motion.
members of the council.
Roll call vote.
Counselor Sasslaw,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.